Hello everybody, and thank you for clicking on the video, and if you want to like, subscribe, comment, even if you don't like the video, just to help with the algorithm, that'd be greatly appreciated. Without further ado, I'm just going to get straight into the video. DM won't let me play characters because I am a woman. This was a post on r/RPG horror stories by the user MudOpless. I'm in a D&D group with 4 of my closest friends. Our DM is the only man in our group, and he's generally a good DM. Sorry for the clickbait, my apologies. In December, he told us we were about to start a new campaign, and that we needed to create a new character with 3 main guidelines: minimal pre-campaign trauma, living parents, and a spell-casting cast. What? We are also not allowed to tell each other about our characters before the campaign, so we wouldn't pick our characters based on the other players' choices. This campaign was going to be more roleplay heavy than the previous ones I had done before, so our DM wanted different body language or voices when we played our character. This was a little bit of a problem for me. Because all of the players are close friends, we have a tendency to joke around with each other and break character easily. It's also reasonably hard for me to roleplay when I worry that I'll get teased for how I'm acting. However, I was confident that if I set boundaries with the other players before the campaign started, I would be able to maintain my character's personality. When I started to create my player character for this first campaign, I specifically wanted to play the character that wasn't female. In the last campaign, I played a feral harpy barter character with a homebrew dex-based fighter class. It was fun, but the other 3 players wanted male or NB, non-binary characters, while my character was the only girl. I wanted to try something different this time. I came up with a strong soldier, an NB warforged, who's struggling with seeing themselves as human, quote-unquote human, Aegis. They're a logic-minded soldier built for war and used to be in the charge of small squadrons of other warforged in charge of defending the archers. So they were going to be defensive in their action spells. Being Enbany was an important part of Agnes, because I wanted them to struggle with making relationships and feeling worthy of human decency. Being built during the war they were in, they were taught not to make lasting relationships because they would eventually die. They're neutral about their gender too, so it makes the most sense to be NB. I actually agree with that, personal note. After the war, they found themselves very restless with nothing to do. It's another former soldier that they left sends them to magical college, the singer of our campaign, to take off their mind of the war and find a new purpose. For the class, I want to do something like a paladin, where the character learns to use their magic combined with their fighting abilities. The DM had to put out a list of all the classes with their magic in them. An Eldritch Knight fighter was on it. It was the perfect fit and captured Agnes perfectly, although a little stereotypical, but for a valid reason. The DM even suggested this class when I was throwing around ideas. However, things began to get suspicious when we talked more about my character. My DM first told me that he had doubts about my ability to roleplay my character. I told him I understood. I understood it was a character type I hadn't played to but I was also actively dealing with my character's personality in a Google Doc with a question template and backstory paragraphs. I believed I was prepared to roleplay this character effectively. He asked me what the gender of my character was, and I told Agnes was an NB. His response was, a non-binary Civil War veteran with PTSD. Is there a way that you could change it so you could roleplay it better? This is when he suggested that I change my character's gender to be a woman. I told the DM that I liked Agnes how they were, but I suggested that I could make a different construct character based on lamps, because I thought it was a good idea. And I was so early in character creation that starting over would not bother me. Agnes didn't even have a name yet. He further clarified that he thought that the war veteran with PTSD would be most difficult for me to roleplay, even though he mentioned changing Agnes' gender, but I explained that I was fairly confident in my ability to do so. I had the ability to act out and choose my character, which do just fine, but being the character and the vibe that the players get from me would be the hard part. But I could explain this to the players and do my best to remind the players that I am Agnes and not get out of the game itself. I also did not plan on them playing very traumatized. Just used to be in the war as their base experiments. They would merely have habits from being a soldier, not flashbacks or panic attacks. After this back and forth was settled, the DM messaged me a day later, asking if I would be playing as an Abertrician wizard for the first 5 levels of the campaign. I confusingly told him that I wouldn't be starting as a fighter, and moving to an Eldritch Knight would fit Agnes best. Explained before, the reason that they were sent to college in the first place is to try to learn something new to occupy their mind instead of something familiar. Starting as a wizard wouldn't really work out either. But I also was willing to change this if magic in the early game was super important. I even suggested small modifications to the fighter class to get the subclass early or something. He seemed pretty reasonably hesitant to homebrew my class. After one more explanation of why I considered being an Eldritch Knight important to Agnes's design, but still remaining open to changes if magic was important to role-playing aspect, the DM decided to give Agnes a recharging magical core item that allowed them to cast spells at the beginning of the campaign. It was all settled. I thought everything was good about my character and how the issues were addressed. I was so wrong. 22 days later, the DM asked, "What is Agnes's gender?" Yes, we're forged have gender, which I don't really know what it is. I'll put an explanation on the screen. Again, I reminded him that Agnes is non-binary. He responds, "Which gender are you best playing as? That's what's important." I told him that I'm fine with any. I personally use she, they, I don't know what that means, but I am fine with being called any pronouns. It was not something I was uncomfortable about. I wanted an androgynous character because it felt bad. Whatever that means, the DM responds stubbornly, to say the least. "I feel like you're trying to preserve an original concept of a fleeting character. You can change things about the character so that you can roleplay them better." I don't know why I turned into British Trump there. As I mentioned, I felt I was confident in how I could roleplay Agnes. This wasn't a problem for me, but potentially for other players that would have difficulty remembering who I was replaying as. Something out of my control. I said I would think about it more in quotations, but it was just an excuse for me to find a way to state my answer firmly without seeming very rude. 4 days later, my response is, "Agnes will be NB, non-binary, in case you forget." I told him that choosing female might limit the perspective of how other players and NPCs see them, and that being female will not help me play a female Agnes because our personality traits are very different. I made sure to ask him especially address any concerns he had about Agnes being NB, because I was failing to understand the issues with my choice. I really wanted to know where he was coming so I could compromise. His only response was, The passion aggressive is crazy." I clarified that I did not intend to sound passive-aggressive, and just wanted to sound confident in my response. My previous decisions on the gender of Agnes may have come as unsure. The DM did not respond. I asked for any scenarios that would be useful for my character to prepare for, or for any personality gaps that should be fixed before the first session. He did not address these questions, instead asking about which weapon and shield Agnes would use. We got into another argument where the DM expressed concern about the fact that I wanted Agnes to be a leader character, but I described them as minimally speaking. He said Agnes would be more assertive. I clarified that I meant their sentences were short and to the point, not quiet. He stereotyped my character, too, like a paladin, but I didn't like how stereotyping them removed the important backstory details. I explained why I didn't like how the DM stereotyped Agnes, defined more of the type of leader Agnes would be, experienced and logical, and whatever that's called, and the issue seemed to be the end. I began to answer the DM's required character questions before the campaign, and drew my official character's designs for Agnes. I asked if everything was okay with these, and then he responded with almost nothing, save for an image of a Minecraft copper golem. Agnes was made out of copper materials. I was a little upset about Agnes being stereotyped again, so I asked him for genuine feedback. DM was worried it would be too rigid with the quote-unquote vision of my character, which was a valid concern. But I assured him that the reason that I had to be so picky about their stuff was because I needed a steady base to start the character. I have strong ideas for the foundation, not the future. The DM asked a few more questions, but they were settled without much discussion. Then the DM told me in person that I had to be a female character. This was because all 3 other of the players were also women, and Agnes also needed to be a woman so they could share a dorm room. It was important that we shared a dorm room so that the party would get along better. This came out of nowhere, to be honest. If they had been a big issue before, why hadn't he said anything? I try my best to compromise, 16 total, to keep Agnes as they are and still live in the same dorm rooms with the rest of the party. The DM gave me kind of an ultimatum. It occurs to me that I am the only person who knows how the dorm entry system works at a college, so I'll simply simplify it into a situation for you to answer. There are 2 dorm rooms for you, for either Agnes is a female, and there are 2 people per dorm, or Agnes is not a female, and they have to have their own dorm, and the other 3 share one. At this point, I knew I had to thoroughly explain why Agnes being a female would ruin the character. I thought that making them female would make them too similar to the character I played in the last campaign. I understood why making Agnes female would make it easier route to connecting the party together, but I didn't understand why this was the only option. I did not want to sacrifice an important part of Agnes's character for a small issue that could be easily fixed by changing one tiny rule. Honestly, I agree. I mean, like, if you're too lazy to fix a very small part of the story and just work around, then how good of a DM even are you? Despite trying my best to stay neutral tone but confident in myself, I regrettably even used AI to make sure that the tone wasn't off. The DM still saw my response as passive aggressive. He told me things like, if being a non-binary character is that important to Agnes, that's probably not a good thing to be controlling that much of your character. And he seems to think that simply changing my character to female would fix a perceived schism within the social dynamics of the party. Then he sent me a paragraph that genuinely made me feel upset. I am not confident in your role-playing abilities to play as a non-binary individual. Whenever any of you play as genders that are not your gender, I never associate in my head what gender your character is. I always just think, that character is a girl. I have seen that you cannot pull off being a dude, and my last D&D character showed me that you have wonderful role-playing abilities. They're not used up properly when you don't play as a woman. This is why every single player who plays D&D plays as a character who is their gender. These were crazy things to say. Yeah, I agree with, because, like, if they're not good, then let them get used to it, and then they'll be good in the future, especially if this is considered to be, like, a long-term campaign. My only male character, the one he was referring to, was firstly the first time I ever played a guy in D&D. Additionally, it was strongly based on, read literally, a character I was obsessed with, but could not replicate at all. I had no forethought about how I'd actually play the character, especially without embarrassness. I told him that, frankly, I care about your confidence in me, but it was my own confidence that really affects the character. I felt a little rude that you would blatantly claim that I would not be a good fit for a non-binary, Jesus Christ, character, despite my constant telling of you otherwise. I can do nothing to make you think that I am not non-binary, but what matters most is the actions and characterization of Agnes in the role-playing setting, not the gender that you perceive them as. Agnes's gender affects them internally and guides some of their actions, but if you or the other players fail to see Agnes's gender because of the physical appearance, I can do nothing. This probably came off a little rude, and I regret that, but I was beginning to lose my patience and hold back my anger. Yeah, also, it's like, are you, like, really imagining the character that much? And also, like, isn't non-binary, like, you don't really care, and it's, like, just kind of in the middle where it's just like, whatever. I mean, that doesn't really matter at that point, does it? I ended with an ultimatum of my own. I genuinely do not want to be a huge problem for you or the campaign, but it does not seem like my attempts at compromise will satisfy both of us. Non-binary fits Agnes best, and I will not be changing their gender if this conflicts too harshly with the campaign. There are no other options. I can create a new character. And I'm creating a new character that I love. A slightly nerfed astral elf, astral sorcerer, modified werewolf. What? But the fights with my DM still bug me to this day, and probably will for a while. After making my new character, I found out that the reason the DM made the final push of Agnes being a female was because one of the other players who originally had a male scrapped and created a female one. This implies, however, that the DM was fine with a male character roaming with an enemy, but not a female character roaming with an enemy, which to me is very unfair and weird. It seemed just kind of like weird and just like sexist, and just like, honestly, I don't really care about NB and all that. Like, I've never really cared, but that just seems kind of like picking and choosing and just like thing and just being weird about it that doesn't really need to happen. Anyway, that's the video. If you can like, subscribe, comment, just help it get pushed out to other people in the algorithm, that would be greatly appreciated. This took a while to read, and thank you for watching. Bye-bye.